Good morning, guys. Welcome back. Today we are doing my new pattern, the Harlot. So it's a small crossbody bag. It's got bag feet. It's got zipper tabs. It's got an internal zipper. And I've done it with invisible strap connectors on fabric. So if you'd like to see how to do this, please stay tuned. Alright, so I prepped this all last night. So this is all the hardware I need. So I need one strap adjuster, and then if you want to, you can either use 2D rings and then 2 lobster claws clasps, or you can just use square rings and join it directly to the bag. It just depends on how much hardware you want to use and the look you're going for. So I'm going to do all the hardware just because I can. And I've got my base piece here so that I can mark the bag feet positions. I've used the foam, so I've written in the pattern to use foam or fleece. I found that my testers on domestic machines, the foam was a bit more difficult, but my testers on industrial ones like this or with walking feet, they did fine. So I've put both options in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my front panel and one of my accent pieces and just line it up along the top. And then I'm going to stitch around the edge with a nice long decorative stitch length. So I'm going to do the sides as well, just so they don't lift up later. And back stitch, because we always back stitch. If this is slippery for you, definitely use some double-sided tape. The cork is actually quite nice. And then when you get to the point, you want to make sure that you line it right up in the center, because it'll look prettier, and because we're going to use that to do our vertical lines. Always stop with your needle down to pivot. And then I'm going to grab my second piece and go again. So what I'm doing right now is called chain stitching, where you stitch one thing straight after the other without chopping it off. I just do like a little bit and then I chop it off. Okay, so you're now going to want I'm going to use my Chaco pen and a ruler. I did try and buy more of these for the website, but they're out, so I can't help that. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my ruler and make sure that it's straight, and then rule a line straight up the center, like that. You can't really see it. I can see it from here. Then I'm going to I'm using my 1-inch ruler, so that I can just put it on the edge of the other line and work my way across, ruling lines. And then I'm going to flip it over and go the other way. Now, you don't have to do this particular quilting pattern. What else would be really fun is if you did V's or like a crisscross so you get diamonds. I just thought I'd start with something simple. So I'm going to start in the middle. I'm going to back stitch to lock it in. And then I'm going to stitch down that line until I get to the stitching. And I don't want to go past the stitching. And then go back through the previous hole into the same one. And done. So this is where we're about to get a lot of tails. So I promise I'm not going to say trim your tails every single time. Another way to do this, if you want to, and always make sure your tails are behind. It stops the rat's nest issues. So another thing that you can do is get down to the stitches, stitch them, and then pull it out, leaving a tail. And then if you just work this one around in circles, it'll create a loop. So you can pull that loop out, and then you don't have any kind of back stitching on the front, so it looks even neater. But this way is definitely more time consuming. So for the sake of the video, I won't do this. but it is a much nicer way to finish it off. I'm throwing all of this on the floor because I forgot to get my bin for the video, and I refuse to stop the video just for a bin. So I will just vacuum up later. It's fine. I actually feel really guilty doing it. I know it's me that's got to clean it up, but that's kind of not the point. So I'd actually like to see what other kind of patterns you guys come up with if you decide to get this bag, because I've got some crazy ideas. I might even do another video with my crazy idea. I kind of want to do fish scales or mermaid scales, depending on what I pair it with. And I'm also using a contrasting thread because I want to see my stitching. So if I had done a brown, which I did briefly consider, I don't think it would have looked as good because I'm using the cork. If I had to use a solid vinyl, which I am using for other parts of the bag, just not the accent, a solid vinyl I could have got away with brown, but I think in the cork the stitches would get lost if they're the same colour. So I opted for not. Now this, the chalk lines have actually pretty much disappeared, so I won't need to wipe them off. But if you do, you can literally just use your sleeve like this and rub, and the chalk comes off. So that is now done. And if you look that way, you can actually see it's got like a little bit of, what is it, height to it. So it's squished it down a little bit to give it some actual texture on the front, which is a bit fun. Alright, so again, we want to make sure that the ruler is straight along that edge and then down to the center. And then rule all your lines. You can also use a friction pen, and then you could just shoot it with a shot of steam and all the lines will go away. Or Taylor's chalk. I don't know. World's your oyster, really. So again, I'm going to start in the center. That's a quilting thing, so when you're making a quilt, you should always start in the center and work out. It probably wouldn't necessarily matter here, but old habits die hard. So I'm not going too fast because I don't want to run past the stitches. It won't look as neat. I should have picked a pattern where I don't have as many joins, but anyway. I'm designing a pattern that's a little bit quicker to show you. I could pause the video, I suppose, but we're nearly finished. And you never know, you might be sewing along. I've had a lot of people suggest to me that I should just show you and then do the other one off camera, but that's just not as much fun. You never know what random bit of information is going to shoot into my brain to tell you. Alrighty, so now you should have your two panels quilted and joined and beautiful. Now we're going to put them aside because we're not going to use them again for a little while. I'm going to take my side pockets. So I've used cork on the outside, so I didn't put an interfacing on this because it's stiff enough. And then I've put a medium woven on the back of the lining, and I just went with a solid because, I don't know, it inspired me when I looked at it. I really like this floral. I'm not big on florals. I know I'm wearing floral. This is one of the few florals I found that I actually quite like. Alright, so I'm back down to a joining stitch. So for me is 2.5. Then I'm just going to back stitch. And when I get to that center, I'm going to needle down and pivot so I can come back up the other side and make a nice crisp point. And then back stitch. Nope. What am I doing? Right sides together. Needle down and pivot. Sometimes you can stop though, which is nice. And then back stitch, and I just ran out of bobbin thread. I could hear it. Okay. So I don't like to waste as much, so I just pull it back through, and then I'm going to chop it here so there's enough to tie on, and then wind another bobbin. So I'm going to get the bobbin started, and then I'm also going to oil my bobbin case underneath. If you've never seen one of my videos before, the guy that used to service my machine told me that every time you wind a bobbin, if you just stick a couple of drops of oil on the bobbin holder, you will need a lot fewer services. So I just put like a drop on and then listen to the difference. I don't know if you can hear that, but I definitely can. I also never wind my bobbins all the way full. I find they give me grief if I do. So I wind them like, I don't know, 3/4, 7/8, somewhere around there. Just not actually full. And then I'm just going to tie this back on. This is how I change colour on machines too. So just tie it on and then pull the knot through and chop it off. It may seem lazy. You may call it efficient. I call it convenient. I never do this on domestic machines because you can thread them without letting go of your thread. This one has got a tricky bit here, and this bit takes the most time, and I just don't enjoy doing it, so I don't. I skip it. Okay, threads behind. Now I'm going to go back over the last few stitches I did to make sure that the old line's locked in. And then I'm going to twist up. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's definitely much, much quieter. Okay. No, there they are. These are the scissors I want. So I've just got little scissors, and I'm going to cut a V out of where that pivot point is. So I've made it a nice thicker V. I've gone very close to the stitches, but obviously not actually snipped them. So now, when I flip this over, we're going to get a nice point in the center. It's not curved. And then you're just going to fold that down. Now, if you've done fabric for both, definitely grab an iron and just iron that down. I'm just going to finger press it and then put it back up to a decorative stitch. Oh my God, I can't speak this morning. Because we're now top stitching, and I'm just top stitching 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Mainly to hold these two down, but also because it looks pretty. Trim your tails. I've got ones in the middle because I ran out of bobbin. And then again, I'm just going to cut a wider triangle out of that center. And then bend both sides over and under and top stitch. Making sure I back stitch as well because I don't want my stitches to come undone. And then stop at the bottom of the V and then pivot back upwards. And I'm just finger pressing the cork down. I haven't played with cork in a while actually. I found it in the bottom of my tub while I was scrap busting on the weekend. Then I'm just going to chop off these little kind of dog ears that we've got going on. I could have written the pattern without them, but it's easier to chop them off than to trace the shape. So there we go. So there's our side pockets. Now I'm going to stick them aside as well. And I want to take my side pieces and the 2-inch scrap squares. So they don't have to be exactly 2 inches, but I had to write something. So I wrote 2 inches. So I'm going to take a pen and a ruler. And I'm going to go roughly in the center, but again, it doesn't have to be perfectly in the center. And I'm going to draw a 1/4 inch by 1 and like a tiny little bit extra. So it's not even like an 1/8 of an inch. It's just like a smidgeny wider and then 1/4 of an inch box. I'm going to do that to both. If you've done vinyl sides, you actually don't need to do this. This is just to do invisible or hidden strap connectors on fabric. So otherwise you can just cut the slit, stitch it, fold it, cut it. Actually, I need that. So then we're going to measure down. So I want the top of the box, actually, and I want it in the center. We're going to find the center now before I start adding hardware. It's going to be way easier. We're going to need that later for that mark. So if I find the centers now, I won't try and be, if I did it later, I'd have a chunk of hardware here and this would be harder to do. So I figure while it's easier, we may as well find the center of everything, like so, and then measure down. So like that. So that's where you want it to be. So we're just going to go back to a joining stitch and stitch the box, like we would for a zipper pocket. Needle down and pivot. I'm going to do both at the same time so that I can do both the cutting at the same time. Pull it out. Before I chop it, I'll just start stitching the next one. Now I'm going to chop it off because it's in my way. I'll get the bottom ones later. So yeah, this piece of fabric doesn't really matter what it is. It can be the same as the outside, it can be the lining, it can be a random piece you picked up off your floor. So then, what we're going to do is I'm going to cut the center. So like the center 3/4, and then I'm going to triangle out the corners, but I'm doing it with a knife because it's really small and would probably be too hard to do with scissors. Right, so now I've got my triangle that I always do. So I'm going to do the same to this one. I have drawn this in the pattern so that you can see what I'm doing. It's a bit hard to show you. And then if you're worried about the bulk, which I'm not, but you might be, you can just come along and trim off some of the foam off the back to make it a bit skinnier. It's not a big deal though. And then we're going to take all of that little square and push it through that hole. And then if you just tug on it from the back, it should all come through. So now we've got our hole for our strap. But before we sew the strap, we want to stitch 3 of these sides down. So I'm going to stitch the short side, the top, and the other short side, but leave the bottom open or unstitched. So you just want to tug on this a little bit. I didn't get close enough to my corners by the look of it. Maybe the foam's just in the way. There we go. All right. So I'm going to start on the short side. I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to go up. And I'm doing this about 1/8 of an inch. Then I'm going to go across the top. Needle down. And then I'm going to just do the short side again. So that's now held those 3 sides in place. And we'll do the other one in a minute. So again, push it all through the hole. And I want to do short side, top, and then short side again. Awesome. So, what other pieces have I got going on here? Where are my little short strap connector pieces? There's my strap. There's my pocket. Alright, I need to pause while I find this. So I cut some more. I don't know where they went. It's fine. So I've got my 2 strap connectors, but I haven't cut the middle line because it's going to be easier to top stitch them without it. It's also easier to put the sticky tape on. So I'm just putting some double-sided tape down the center. Then I'm pulling off the backing and folding each side into the middle. Now, if you're new to sewing or you don't have vinyl, you can make these out of fabric. Just make sure that you interface the pieces to make them stronger. So I, from me, would be using extra heavy iron-on no woven because that's my favorite interfacing, I guess. So now this is an optional extra as well. I'm going to stitch 2 lines down the center, or each side of the center. This is more decorative than anything else, so you can skip this if you want to. I like it. I think it's pretty, but each to their own. And then I'm just going to fold it in half and cut it in half. And then there is my 2 strap connectors. So I'm going to do, with the join side up, I'm going to put it through the hole. And I'm only going to have it go through probably 1/3. And then I'm going to take my D-ring and slide that on. But before I stitch it down, I want to stitch this to the top edge. So like right on the join is where I plan on stitching it. Cross like that. Then I'm going to fold this down into the hole. and pull from the back like so, and then stitch that box, that decorative box that we did. I'm going to stitch it shut. So make sure I back stitch and then stitch across and back stitch. And then if you want to, you can add like a rivet underneath as well. I don't think this bag needs it. So there is your hidden strap connector out of fabric. Do the second one. So again, in, join side up, third of the way in, out, in. Third of the way in, 2/3 of the way out. Stitch. D-ring, slide it on. Other side through. If you do it exactly half, you're going to struggle putting the other side through. It's just one of those things. And then stitch and back stitch. All right. Bob's your uncle. I gotta stop saying that. Apparently that's not a widely known expression. I was not aware of this. Okie dokie. Pocket. So I've got one long pocket that I'm gonna fold in half. You can make yours a bit bigger if you want to. I chose not to. So then we're going to draw on our, zipper rectangle. I keep dropping everything today. I think I need to come to the conclusion that I'm just clumsy. Which is fine. 1, 2, 3. So I always do it 3/4 of an inch in from the side because I find it easier to stitch. You don't have to do it that way. You could have a wider zipper hole if you wanted to. I find 3/4 of an inch is nice and easy to sew up where the zip gets to though. But that's just me. So I'm going to line it up and probably do there. So in the center, and I just leave like 1/4 of an inch gap at the bottom. We're going to turn that up under anyway. So by the time we turn it, it should be the full length of the bag. Back to a joining stitch length. I'm going to stitch and back stitch. Whoops. One hole too many. Needle down pivot. And back stitch. And then I'm just going to fold this in half and cut the box down the center. These are really small scissors. I should have grabbed bigger ones, but anyway. Then I'm going to triangle out the corners. And then go the other way. And then take the pocket and push the whole lot through the hole. It's obviously bigger one and easier one than the little side connectors. But exactly the same principle, just a different size. And then you just want to fold it down right on that seam. I'm just going to finger press this unless it misbehaves, and then I might have to go to the iron. I've actually bought a mini iron. I just need to work out how to set up like another, I need another basically table that you guys are currently sitting on, so I can have a portable one. Alright, zipper tape. I always cut mine the width of the zip. And that way the sides will be hidden in the seam. And then I'm just going to put my zipper on. I really like these zippers. If I can get them on. There we go. Done. So I'm just going to take the zipper and lay the pocket over the top, lining up the edge of the zip with the edge of the fabric, because that's how big we cut it. And then we're just going to top stitch around the box. You just want to get your zipper out of the way. Then I'm going to zip it open so that the zipper pull doesn't disrupt my stitches. And then again, zip it up. Then I'm going to back stitch. And I'll be turning the last little bit of the bag through here. So I'm going to open it and then I'm just going to stitch the two sides. See how that 3/4 of an inch just gives you an easier ability to stitch the side. There's more gap between the stitching and the edge. And that was way too much back stitching, but that's okay. I just felt like it. Trim off all my tails. Pocket done. So now we're just up to actual construction. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I don't forget, is put on my side pockets. So I'm just going to baste them on with a long stitch and a 1/8 of an inch stitch seam allowance. Because I don't want to see these stitches, but it definitely helps to hold it in place. And then back stitch and do the other one. Line it all up. Chain stitch it in. Oh, I can hear someone at my door. My interfacing. Yay. Okay, pull these out. Pop them aside. So now we're going to do, I'm going to install the bag feet now, just because I've got it all here. So I've just punched holes through my pattern template, so I can literally just lay it on. And draw out where I want the feet to be. The other thing I could do is actually just clip this to it and then use my hole punch to punch the holes through kind of both. And then I'm just going to, you know what, I'll bring it over. I need that one, and then I'm going to need this one. So I'm just going to punch the holes where I've drawn. Like so. And then we push the posts from the back. So I put all 4 in. I love rivet feet. I'm definitely addicted to them and I'm never going back. So you can just kind of click them together and then I'm just squishing them down a little bit more with my cam press. And you feel them go. So you don't have to squish them down as hard as humanly possible. You just squish them down enough that you feel them go squishier. Back feet. I also usually embroider my logo here, but I didn't do it this time because it's a video. Okay, zipper. Now we're just up to joining everything together. So I'm going to need my zipper pull. And then I just want to melt the end of this because it's having, actually, I'm going to chop it off. It's having a moment. Melt the end. Measure out your zip. Now I've done all the math for you on this. So long as you cut it exactly the way I've done it, it should all work. But you can always just make your zipper tabs longer. So I've got them exactly so that you don't have to trim any excess off. But you definitely could just, you know, cut these whatever length you like. You just want to make sure that the width of your zipper tape is the width of your bits. All right. Zipper pull. These were probably actually an overkill. These are quite heavy. Okay, zipper's on. So I'm going to take one lining piece and then one top piece and join them like this. And I'm just going to do a 1/4 inch seam on a joining stitch length. Then if you want to get a bit fancy, we can set up the other side. We're also putting right sides together. There's not really a right and a wrong side to homespun. And for zipper tabs, it's definitely not going to matter. But I am putting the right side down on my patterned outside one. You could also make this with zipper ends instead of zipper tabs and then not even stitch the zip into the seam later if you wanted to. That would potentially be quite cute as well. Alright. I'm going to chop that off. Clean up my desk. And then I'm going to pull both sides back and top stitch a 1/4 inch. Or 1/8 inch, actually. I'm going to do 1/8 inch, so it's quite decorative and close. And then I'm going to swing round the other one and top stitch it. So you don't have to chain stitch like this. You can cut each one. Separate them. And then you've only got one tail. Look at that. Okay, zipper, done. So I always grab the one that I've put the zipper on so that I make sure that my zips go in the same direction. That's just my little thing. I like it to happen. It needs to happen. So I'm doing it. So now I'm going to clip just these two together. If you've ever watched any of my videos, you know I hate clipping 3 things at the same time. It never works out the way you want. Clip. Lots of clips so it doesn't shift. That's exactly what I don't want. Now I'm going to put the zip all the way back so it's out of my way. And then I'm going to take one of my front pieces and put it right sides down. It's very important to clip off these tails or they will poke through when you're trying to stitch it all together. It's not fun. So now I can just add this piece into the clips, and I find this way quicker than me trying to do 3 at once. But that's just potentially my issue, so you can definitely line all 3 up and then clip them together if you prefer. So, joining stitch, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Sorry, my phone just flashed at me. It's an alarm I had set. Should be right. Okay, and then when I get close to the zipper, I'm going to zip it out of the way and then finish the seam. And then I can swing this around while it's still attached and just fold over the top half and then top stitch. So for my top stitch, I'm going to do it a little bit longer. And I'm going to move that so I don't knock it. So I'm making sure that the seam is folded under where I'm stitching. It is a little bit stiff because of the cork, but it'll be right. And then back stitch. It's one side done. Next side. Clip it in. I mean, we can try and do 3 at once. Ah! Okay, back to a joining stitch, length. Back stitch at the start. Get near the zipper and you feel it because it gets like a bulge. Zip it down and out of the way. Spin it around, top stitch, and then we're just going to fold over the top. So we're not including the lining in this. Make sure this is zipped open, and then we're going to go to our lining. So I want to stick in my side pieces, but first I'm going to find the center, not those ones. Where's my other scissors gone? They'll do. I don't use my snippers to cut this because I've cut myself one too many times. It's also going to make them more blunt quicker, which is not good because I use them a lot. Okay, while we're at it, we may as well find the center of everything, and then I can put the scissors away. So I'm not going to do the short edges of the base, but I am going to do the long edges. Fold it in half, and then just snip where the fold is. Now I'm just doing really small snips because I want to make sure that this is in my seam allowance. You could also just mark it with a pen if you wanted to. I personally find the snipping more effective, but it's your world. You do it however you like. So, wonder clips. Grab a bottom. And then I'm going to clip it. I don't remember which way I want my clips to sit. I'm going to come and I'm going to do the middle piece at the middle. I think I made my zipper tabs a little bit short, but that's okay. So you just want to work this into the curve. Like that. Then we're going to do the other side, so the same thing again. Join the base so it lines up, and then we're going to work this into the curve, like that. Enough clips and anything will hold. So now we've got, oh, you can't really see it. Now we've got clipped all around, so we're going to stitch all the way around with the seam allowance. So we're doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm not sure if you watched the video where I drew the line on here. It's already gone. For anyone that was worried about drawing with permanent marker on your sewing machine, my line has literally already gone. So I'm going to get up close to this edge, and then once I hit the outside panels, I'm just going to stop stitching there, because that last little bit's going to get caught up in the stitching later on. So I'm going to start from the bottom and come up again. So stitching around and as close to the outer thing as we can without actually stitching over it. So we will technically have a gap here, but we're going to seal it up later, I promise. Okay, other side. So again, center on the center of the tab. And then I come to the bottom and I work my way up to the curve so that my base is even. And this does fit, I promise. You've just got to kind of work it in. So the best way to do that is take your thumbs and make them bend and then hold all the fabric together like that and see how it fits and there's no lumps. Then you can just add clips in. So it might be a bit kind of bubbly and ruffly outside of the seam allowance, but so long as your seam allowance doesn't have any kind of snags, you're good to go. So again, hold it on the 3, because it's a 3D object. Hold it as the 3D object. And then just add clips. Start from the bottom. We're going to go up. Move the other clips out of the way. I get right up to that top exterior panel, but I don't stitch over it. And then again, I'm going to stitch bottom to top. I'm also making sure on this one that I don't get the zipper pocket caught in my seam, because then we will have to unpick it, which is not fun. Alright, and then again up to the exterior piece. So now technically I've got little holes here, but that doesn't matter, I promise. So I'm going to find the center of these base piece of the main lining panel pieces. I'm also going to trim off those tails because they're going to drive me insane. I'm definitely vacuuming after this video. Okay, and so then I'm just going to join one side on in the lining. So I'm not going to join all of them. I'm just going to do the one. So I'm going to stitch from this seam to this seam. Trim your tails. And then I'm just going to do a little clip up to the stitching. That's going to help later. But now we're onto the outside. So that is all of the inside pieces joined, but we're going to turn the bag through the whole bottom. So we leave it open, but we attach this on so that it's just a bit easier. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten this out and I'm going to pin this bit so that my lining is also in this clip. So what that's going to do is make sure that I'm going to seal up that hole when I get up to stitching here. Then I'm going to switch down to the bottom and do what I did before. I'm going to use more clips on the outside than the inside because I'm now fighting all of the foam that wants to stay the way it wants and not the way I want it to. It doesn't want to bend like this, but it will because I said so. Alright, so however many clips you use is entirely up to you. You might use 6, you might use 20. I'm going to use heaps. This is my pattern. It will be easier to do this if you've chosen to do the fusible fleece instead of the foam. And then you'll still get like a nice feel and a nice shape to it. Okay. And I want another 2 clips there because I can feel that kind of pushing from me. So now I've got it all clipped. Now we just need to stitch it. So I'm going to push the bag down and I'm going to start at the bottom. And I didn't hold that tight enough. Now I can't grab it. There we go. Okay, so come back and line up the bottom. Now the bag foam should be right at the edge of your seam allowance. So you shouldn't need to stitch the foam, you just stitch next to it. Which should help with some of the bulk in that seam. So now I'm going to pivot and I'm just going to push this down again so that all the bits are out of the way. I also want to make sure that this bit is going to get stitched in the seam allowance, and then we're going to fold it over again. Now this might look tricky. It is a little bit, but again, that's because it's bag foam. It's not impossible to do. And if you are struggling, do it the way I did the lining, where you go up one side and then up the other side. And then you can look on the inside and check. Everything is lovely. There's not a hole. I just looked at that in there and it looks like there's a hole. That's the zipper tab. So I'm just going to take some of this bulk off this curve. Make it sit nicer, like that. And then we're going to attach the other side. Now again, make sure your zipper's open. Trim off all your tails, of which I have plenty going on. And so again, I'm going to start at the top. So I'm going to make sure that my zipper tab and my lining piece and my outside piece are all going to catch there so that I don't leave a hole like that. And then I'm going to put 2 clips either side to help hold that because just one won't survive. And then I'm going to switch down to the bottom, grab out some more clips and clip upwards. And then do the other side. If you've got a cylinder arm, this would also be easier to stitch on that. Or if you've got a domestic, stick some big ass heavy books underneath it to raise it up, and then you can treat it like that. That would actually help with a lot of stitching. If you bring it up higher, so you're not trying to fight pushing it on a flat surface, you might find it helps quite a lot. Alright, so again, I'm going to squish the bag down out of the way. Stitch, back stitch, up we go. Needle down when we readjust. So there's a lot going on up in this seam. Needle down, readjust again. So I'm nearly to the top. So I want to make sure it's going to catch the lining piece in these stitches, and that will close off that little hole. Okay, now I can see that I have pinched like the tiniest bit of fabric right there. So from this side, I'm going to come back and just fix it. There we go. So I had a little pinch in my fabric, so I unclipped it and then just re-stitched it up without the clipping, without the pinching. So to make this easier on myself, I am going to take some scissors and just cut back some of this part here at the join, because I've got my pocket, or pockets, because we did two, in this seam, and so I don't want it to be too bulky when I add my base. Now my machine would handle that fine, but again, if you're on a domestic, that would be my suggestion. And so then we're going to find the center of here, clip, and then find the center again. So I'm just joining the seam here and bringing it out and folding it, and then that fold is the center. So now I can put my base in. So I'm going to line up the center of this with the center of the base. And I'm going to clip it down. So basically I'm going to stitch from this seam to this seam, but I'm going to have it this side up, which is the equivalent of the base stabilizer to the base stabilizer. And then backstitch. I'm going to run out of bobbin thread again soon, I think. So then I'm going to do the opposite side. So I do the two long sides first before we go and do the short sides. More the merrier when it comes to clips. I've seen a lot of people do like staples and stuff as well. You could do that if you wanted to. And then back stitch. Now before we go on to the next bit, I'm going to take some scissors and I'm just going to clip up to the edge of the stitches where we were. So this is going to help put the next bit on. So it's just a little clip there, right at the, so there's the edge of the stitches and then there's the clip. You don't want to actually clip on your stitches, just close to. So then, if you grab those clip parts and pull, that will then line up perfectly with the side. It's like your own little personal tab holder. So again, we grab the tabs and pull, and then that will line up perfectly, or it should, with the other side. So now we just stitch from where we stopped our last stitching to where we stopped on the other stitching. And if you go stitching to stitching, there will be no holes. And then back stitch. And then we're going to do the other side. So again, we're pushing the bag down out of the way. It can handle it, I promise. And then stitch along and then back stitch. Trim off all of those tails, of which I have left many. My bin's over there, so I'm now trying to attempt to get them in the bin. Some of them do, some of them don't. It's better than all of them don't when I throw them on the floor here. Okay, so before we turn it through, we're just going to clip down this seam allowance so that the bag sits nicer. So I'm pretty inclined to cut most of it off, and then your lining is going to sit flatter in the bag. But you still want to leave like a little bit, so I'm probably leaving, oh, I don't know, but 3/8 of an inch, maybe? I don't know. A little bit. No, less than 1/4. I don't know. 1/4, 1/8? What's between 1/4 and 1/8? My brain can't do maths today, apparently. Alright, in the bin. Now we just turn it through. So because we've got the whole base to do it, this should be relatively easy. Obviously it's only a small zipper space. So again, I'm going to push a corner to be able to grab it from the inside of the bag. And then I'm going to pull it through. So I'm going to turn the lining over the bag like that. And then just pull that bottom piece through the hole. And it is a bit tight because I've used foam, but the end result means the bag sits glorious. So I'm just grabbing it and kind of easing it out. The birthing in this bag is not fun, I'm not going to lie. It's got a lot of vinyl, it's got a lot of foam, it's a very small bag. So the zipper hole's quite small, so we've used tabs, but the tabs make it cute. I did think about making it without tabs, and then you get more of a space, but I don't know, this month I really seem to like zipper tabs. And then, if you just push here, that should just pop out. See? I'm aware this bag is not fun to birth. All of my testers told me the same thing. And that's probably why I wrote down use fleece, fusible fleece instead of foam. But I personally really like the way the foam looks. So I did it anyway. See? Worth it. And then I'm just kind of pushing on all of the seam to make sure it's all beautifully out. Look at that though. Okay, so hand into the zipper pocket, and then we're going to grab the lining on both sides and pull that back through the zipper pocket, and then join up our middle clips that we did. Clipping. I hate that that's called clipping and these are clips. I need another word for it. Middle markings? I don't know. Leave it with me, I'll come up with something stupid. Now because this is a lining, it's going to behave a lot more, so I'm not using as many clips, as in I just use one. But again, you use as many clips as you feel comfortable with. And then it just doesn't work as well if you don't clip that little bit of fabric. So I highly recommend doing it. Doesn't take that long out of your day, and it just makes a big difference when sticking in your base. Grab the tabs, pull tight, and then stitch from one seam end to the other seam end. Like that. And then the other side as well. So I opted to do vinyl on the base and not cork, just because I didn't have enough cork to do the strap. So now the strap matches. Okay, so that's our base done. So now we're just going to push that back through the hole. like this. And then just, you can double check to make sure you didn't leave any gaps and you didn't miss any bits. And then we're going to take the pocket and we're just going, I'm going to use my fingers and do 1 finger length of a fold. And then join that together. Now again, you can clip this. So if you're a beginner, clip it. You could even use pins. If you're used to making dresses, you could pin this with your pins. And then stitch along. And then I'm going to push the pocket in first, zip that up, and then I'm going to push all the lining in. Like that. Oh my god, it's so cute. So now, we just need to do our shoulder strap. So I have already joined 2 lengths. So this fabric was only 110 wide or 45 inches, and I want my strap longer than that. So I've joined 2 of them together and I just haven't trimmed it down yet. I've got enough there that the leftover could actually be made into a wristlet strap or a bag that I don't know, like a Heidi clutch or something. By Swoon. And then I'm just going to rub the end to keep it warm. It's going to warm up the glue and make it stick better. And then I'm going to fold both sides into the center. So I have finally mastered the whole join it together in the middle thing. It did take me several goes. You see me do it in some videos and I'm terrible at it, but it also just goes to show that practice makes perfect. You also notice I didn't pull all of that off because it tends to stick to like my furniture and then it's annoying to get it off. So if I just do it in pieces, it doesn't stick to anything. I didn't finish that sentence. Sorry, trailed off in my own head. Pull off the last little bit. That did not even get close to the bin. I over flicked it and now it's just directly on the floor in front of the sewing machine. Whatever, it's fine. I will clean up after the video. Okie dokie. So now I'm going to stitch. I've folded under one edge so that there's no raw edge on that end. I haven't done on the other end because I haven't chopped it down yet. So I want to go up to a joining stitch length, which is 3.5 today. A decorative stitch length, not a joining one. Joining one's 2.5. Decorative is anywhere between 3.5 and 4.5 for me. And then I'm just going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the fabric. So I'm just holding it with my fingers to line it up in the center. And I can hear I'm running out of bobbin thread, so I just want to be very wary of that. It gets extra tinny. It gets like a tinny noise when it's nearly empty. Definitely not going to make it the whole way around the strap, but we'll see how far we get. So I'm at the join, so that's a good sign. It means I'm nearly there. Okay, so I'm going to stop about 1 inch away with the needle down, and I'm just going to chop about 1/2 inch past the vinyl. So there's my extra bit. That would work for a wristlet strap. So I'm just going to tuck under the raw edge so that now it's nice and flush and glorious. Needle down and pivot. Now let's see how far we get this side. Normally I go a lot faster on this side, but due to my impending emptying of the bobbin, I'm going to go a bit slower. I'm getting a lot further than I thought I would. Nah, there it goes. I don't know if you could hear that, but it made a different kind of a noise. The more you sew, the more in tune you become with your sewing machine. So again, wind another bobbin. Get it started. So this is a little plunger that was for kids, like baby medicine, when my kid was a baby. You tend to get quite a lot of them going on. So I've just claimed one of the many as my oil distributor. And it's literally only like one drop that you need. I used to have like a pipette oil thing, but I don't know where it's gone. And it was big and bulky and didn't live here well. Okay. So that's the bobbin done. If you over put oil, if you go, oh no, I slipped, a really good idea is to grab, you can just grab a rag really, put your presser foot down and just stitch a line. And this will soak up all of the excess oil that's in your machine. So I'm not actually stitching anything, I haven't got any thread in, but it's just now going to ensure that there's no oil anywhere. I've become pretty good at putting the right amount, but for a while there I wasn't, so I just thought I should show you that. Otherwise you'll get oil all over the project that you're doing, which on the back of this won't matter because it's vinyl and I could just wipe it off. But if you were making like a white dress, that would not be ideal. You'd have an oil stain. And I would hate to be the cause of that. I don't know why I'm holding up my foot. Okay. One full cycle should pull up your bobbin. If it doesn't, something's wrong. See, as I've got a big enough tail that should have pulled it up. So it means that something's stuck somewhere. So it's always good to pull it up to make sure that everything's well behaved. And so then I'm just going to go back to like 2 holes before we run out. And I'm going to go through one, then the other, and then back through the first. As like a back stitching. And then we can continue on. We also need to remember to trim off the tails that will be there. And back. Come back to here and trim these off while you remember. Okay. Last lot of hardware. So I'm going to start with the strap connector. So I want to put it up and around the middle piece. So that little middle piece. And then I'm going to stitch like an X. So I'm going to go across the top. And then diagonally down to the bottom. And I'm just going to keep rotating it. And so I've done an X. I didn't do down the sides. But that is now going to super duper hold that down. So with vinyl side up, I'm going to slide a strap connector with the flat side against the vinyl so that the pretty side's going to show. And then up one side and then down the other through the strap connector again. And then again, flat side on the vinyl. And then I'm going to sew another X. So I'm going to stitch. I recently decided X's look prettier. That's why I don't just do a line anymore. They're also more sturdy. Not that I think that you're going to overfill this bag. And then one more down and then diagonally up to the last corner. Back stitch. And we are done. So again, if you didn't want to use these, you could have just done square rings and joined it directly onto it. But I think that is super cute. There you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I will be back later with more videos. Bye guys.